Suzanne Love has long embraced simplicity. When she decided she wanted to retire early to pursue her activism, she put her accounting skills to work in making a plan to cut back even more.
Because in order to be able to find out if I could do this, I had to take in and start a budget. Can I do it? Let's budget for 3 months and see if that works. What do I need to tweak? So I was figuring this out quarterly for a year before I made the decision that I could do it. So it came after 35 years of working in accounting. and I'm not an accounting nerd, but it helped. Because that way I could find out what can I live without and what do I need to put back into my life that I haven't been living with. And one of the things that I started adding to my life actually was more produce from the Allen Street Market, from Lansing City Market. I started finding out where I could get fresh food. Some people say, well, fresh produce is expensive. I said, but I can do more with it. I could take 4 carrots, 2 potatoes, some broccoli, and I can make soup. And I can eat that soup all week, or I can eat it for 2 days and freeze the rest of it. My budget for food includes me and the dogs and the cat. We get by on $200 a month. And actually, I'm cutting it down because now, this year, I didn't last year, but this year I'm going to freeze. And some of the things that I found I could live without, of course, I'd already found out I could live without a car. So there was no car to get rid of. That didn't factor into it. I said, Americans are so into cleanliness. When did we get to this point? Do I have to wear a piece of clothing and put it into the dirty clothes after one? So one of the things I learned to live without, or live with less, was water, because I now wear my clothes more, and I don't take as many baths and showers, because if I'm sitting here reading all day, why do I need to get up the next day and take a shower? After a year of budgeting, I went into my boss and I said, I'm giving you a year of my time to train other people, because I am going to quit my job and go to work. And he looked at me like, what does that mean? Now, I'm working for a company that's a nonprofit that works with refugees, that works with the disabled, and he still had to ask me that because I worked in accounting. But I told him, my life didn't start out in accounting. I had no degree in accounting. I've never taken a class in it. My degrees are in political science and American social history. I said, so after 35 years of being off track, I'm going on track. And I chose to live in Lansing so that I could do what I'm doing now at the Capitol. That's why I moved to Lansing, because it's given me an opportunity to get to know our legislators. So the last day of work, I just put on my coat and said goodbye, and I came home. Yeah, I bought a house that was 850 square feet, 1 story. That's all I needed. I had it. It wasn't insulated with anything other than rolled newspapers, because that's what they did in 1919. But I had it insulated. I had some new windows put in, but most of them are the original ones, because I can do insulated curtains. Consumer says, I can't make it any lower than equalized $40 a month. That there's nothing they can suggest that would make it lower than that. And BWL they've been nice. I now have a solar powered attic fan, whereas before I never had the AC, but I have not had to turn on a fan at all since I installed that last year. And then, there was the suggestion of the light tunnel, the solar tunnel. It's like a skylight, but it's a special aluminum that reflects and refracts the light as it comes down. And it's, if you can see, this is not a sunny afternoon. You should see it when it's sunny. You should see how bright this house is when the sun is out. I have an antenna on the house now instead of the U-verse. I actually made a step sideways. I did get rid of my landline a couple months ago and got it's a senior plan, $25 a month, and I get so many minutes a month. But $25 for my phone. I still have my U-verse for my computer. One of the other things I did was I discontinued all of my newspapers, which saves me a lot of money. But I can go on Facebook and I can get the New York Times editorials. I can, through email, get MLive and online radio and all of this that keeps me up to date. I am a Cherokee woman trying to walk the Buddhist path in a Christ-like manner, being pulled along by my corgis. And that's it in a nutshell. I've never gone to a church, and yet there are things that I've gathered from so many different religions that they're very important to me. And the biggest thing is what I learned from my father, because he grew up in a little place called Pipestem, West Virginia. He was a farmer, and that was his bliss. And he accepted mine. I wanted to be a president of the United States one day. And you know what? He took me to political events. And he and my mother bought me books. That was the beginning of my bliss. That was, I found out there are people there who can teach me. So I can try to walk the Buddhist path. I love my Buddhist Sangha. And does that make sense? That you can have all of that coming into your life and everything is important. I was born in 1948, and it's a place back in the hills. It was in a hala. And what I remember, because we moved to Michigan when I was 10, so the first years of my life we lived as a co-op. Almost everybody had the same last name. We were all Petries or Millers. But in the place that we lived, my dad was the gardener. My dad grew the food. My dad had a large orchard and inside of that he had apiary. So it was like I said, very symbiotic. Across the street was an uncle who his family had the hogs and the chickens and the cows. And you went down the mountain a little bit and there was another cousin who grew wheat. There was a wheat field. Now that I have the time where I'm not getting on the bus at 7 and coming home at 7, I can think, what can I take from that? What can I share with people that, that doesn't exist in Pipestem anymore? You know, people still live differently than we live here in Lansing, but you know, everybody's moved out. My father's generation has died. So what can we take from something from the late 1940s, early 1950s, and bring that back? What's been happening over the last couple of years has been very disconcerting, because I grew up, you know, having a pet pig. Well, we ate her eventually, but not me. But we had our own animals, and they were part of our family, and we grew our own food, and it wasn't that long ago that people did that. When I first bought my house in 1992 here, I dug up the front yard. Well, in 1992, that didn't go over real well with a lot of people. Fortunately, I had neighbors who didn't complain. But you know, I was growing food there at the time because I have a lot of sun there. But the city didn't really like it. They didn't like it. Somebody told me that I needed to grow grass, and I said, well, I'm allergic to grass. And he said, you are? I said, yeah. Of course, I didn't tell him that it wasn't that kind of grass I'm allergic to. But so they you know, when I said, well, I'm allergic to grass and the stuff that you put on it, which is true. And eventually, people started coming by and going, oh, I like that. So if you go down this street now, there are many houses that have no front lawn. And a lot of them were just, you know, one person had to be the first person to do it.
So they now have a nice term for that, which is edible gardens.
Edible gardens.
And so you can sort of intersperse flowers and vegetables and landscape where you get to eat what you raise.
Yep. But I learned that from my dad, because I didn't know at the time that it was symbiotic living. That you planted your lettuce and you planted onions around that, and marigolds around that, and he also did the Three Sisters. So when we planted our field of corn, we had the squash in the middle between the rows, and we had the beans growing between the stalks. I thought everybody did that. But that was how he gardened. And you know, it's kind of pretty to grow a few stalks of corn in the front yard and have the squash blossoms and have the peas or the beans or the tomatoes. And it's pretty. I decided at the age of 20 that I was going to live like this. The first thing I did was decide that I accepted zero population growth. So I had one child, and that was it. And then, as we started talking about the first Earth Day, I thought, I don't need this car. Really, I don't. You know, so I sold it, and I haven't had a car since. But it's always, I have enough. And if I can live without that, and maybe somebody else is thriving because of that, then I don't need it. You know, my biggest fear is what I feel is important is not becoming the voice that everybody needs to hear. When, you know, you can post on Facebook all you want, but I'm only posting to people who I already, you know, I can share an article, but you know, people still don't know what fracking is. People still don't know what mountaintop mining is. People still don't know that what happened in the 1950s with DDT is happening now with GMO. People don't know that. So the biggest thing is going to be a voice that is able to get this education out in the next 10, we don't have 10 years. And that's my biggest fear, is we don't have 10 years. It's going to take something like a silent spring. Don't be afraid to speak out. And the louder you speak, the better, the quicker the things are going to change. And speaking is writing. Speaking is being on the Capitol steps. Speaking is going on Facebook. I like that as a place to go. We just have to take that Facebook to the next level.